Hello everyone, welcome back to our sci-fi storytelling channel. I hope you're having a peaceful day and may tonight bring you good rest and inspiration. But tonight's story is different. Out on a lonely colony under a dim star, there is an orphanage. Forgotten by the system, left to fade into the dark. One retired soldier walks in, thinking his duty ended long ago, until he discovers the truth. Those children have been erased from the evacuation list. What would you do if you had only one ship, one chance, and a sky full of authorities ready to stop you? Stay with me until the end, because this is a story about courage, sacrifice, and the fire we keep alive for the next generation. Twilight over. Kepler 92. Year 2235. Kepler 92, 612. Light years from Earth. The light from the faded ring swept across the sky, as if sunset had been stretched into eternity. Cold wind rolled in from the sable mines, carrying the tang of wet metal and red dust. Rusted fences rattled and clicked, their sound sharp and hollow. An old shuttle dropped into the dusty yard outside Camp 47. Its hatch groaned as it opened. Harlen Mirek stepped out. His faded soldier's jacket hung heavy on his shoulders, a battered case in one hand. His boots sank into the fine sand. He took a long breath. The air still burned his lungs, just like it had the day he left 20 years ago. A blur shot past. A broken comm unit dangled from a kid's hand as the boy shouted, "False alarm again!" Harlen froze, eyes scanning the yard, the reflex of a man who'd spent half a life in uniform. Near the gate, an old siren sputtered and died. He frowned, tapped his ancient earpiece. Only static. Another kid poked his head from a window and laughed. "Hey, old man. Not scared of alarms?" Harlen stared straight at him, voice rough. "An alarm isn't a game. Next time you stand at attention when the horn sounds." The yard fell silent. The kids ducked back inside, wide-eyed. Harlen tightened his grip on the case and walked toward the main building. Inside, yellow light spilled across stained concrete walls. The Camp 47 sign above the hallway hung crooked, half the letters peeling away. Dampness made the floor groan under every step. He stopped at the office door. In the foggy glass, he caught a glimpse of his face. Older, more worn, but the fire in his eyes still burned. He nodded once, as if to himself. "All right. Start over from here." Wind hissed through the cracks, answering him. A chill traced his spine. This place wasn't just a forgotten orphan camp. It felt like a base abandoned just before the storm. He pushed the door open. The room smelled of paper and faint disinfectant. At the far desk, Warden Mara Juno looked up, tired eyes sharp. "You came just in time," she said quietly. "We need someone to keep order. The kids are about to tear this place apart." Harlen set the case down with a soft thud and gave a single nod. "Discipline, orders." They came flooding back. Tonight would be long. He stood straight at her desk. Mara gestured for him to sit, but her voice went straight to the point. "Rations will last 2 weeks at most. The supply list was cut. They're going to dissolve Camp 47. She slid a battered data tray toward him. "I've been holding out with leftovers from the mines, but Sable shut down. The kids are fighting over scraps." Harlen studied the dark rings under her eyes. There was no fear there. Just exhaustion and a trace of shame for not being able to give the children more. Wind whistled down the hall. Harlen felt the injustice standing in the room with them. Glass shattered somewhere outside. Mara flinched. Harlen was already at the door. Chaos in the hallway. 2 kids had each other by the collar. Another was stuffing hardtack into his pocket. Harlen's growl cut the air like a whip. "Stop! Now!" His boots struck the damp floor in a steady, cold rhythm. 2 lines. "Hands out of your pockets. Eyes forward." A tall boy sneered. "Who's this old guy think he is, giving orders?" Harlen's tone didn't change. "Name?" "Why should I tell you?" "I'll count to 3. 1. The kids froze. 2. The tall boy swallowed hard, stepped back half a pace. 3. Silence. 2 lines snapped into place in 10 seconds. Mara stood in the doorway, stunned at how fast it worked. A small voice piped up behind Harlen. "Mr. A brown-haired girl clutched an old printed migration map. Her hands trembled. "I checked it so many times. Camp 47 isn't on the list. It's gone." Harlen took the paper. The gray words wavered under the yellow light. In the corner, a faded CAA seal and a scrawled note, quota lock. His jaw tightened. Damn it. He looked at the children. Thin faces, wide dark eyes, afraid, but still hoping. He handed the sheet to Mara. If this list is real, tonight we check the port system. For now, discipline first, then food. He turned back to the hall. Oren, help Mara clean up. Bren, Miko, line up for rations. Elin stays with me. The chaos drained away. The wind outside grew louder like a ticking clock. Harlen looked down at Elin. Show me how you found this list. Tonight we dig deeper, and by morning, no one fights over crumbs again. Night fell quickly over Kepler 92. Harlen returned to the old room at the end of the hall. The sliding door groaned as it opened. The room was bare, just a folding bed, a metal table, and a data screen glowing pale blue. Faded starlight from the faded ring cut through the narrow window, striping the dusty floor. He hung his jacket on the hook and sat down. The screen flared to life as it recognized his old military ID. Evacuation lists scrolled past, ship by ship, berth by berth. The word full blazed red in every column. Only 2 ships hadn't launched yet, and both were at capacity. A soft beep pulsed through the room like a countdown clock. Harlen leaned back, fists curling tight on his knees. His voice was rough, almost a whisper. They'll die here if no one does something. A soft knock at the door startled him. The door slid open just enough for Miko, the smallest kid, to peek in. He held out a piece of hardtack, eyes shining. Eat, mister. You have to teach us tomorrow. Harlen took it, smiled faintly, and patted his shoulder. Get some sleep. The door shut again, leaving the room darker, wind whispering through the cracks. Then the emergency light over the wall flashed red. A mechanical voice cut the silence. CAA notice. Camp 47 is not prioritized for evacuation. Quota lock confirmed. Harlen shot to his feet, fingers clenching the edge of the table until his knuckles went white. The red light swept across his face, carving deep lines in shadow. He exhaled slowly, and the steel returned to his eyes. All right. If the system abandons them, I won't. Outside, the wind howled like a war drum. Harlen's shadow stretched across the wall, a soldier about to step into battle. Morning, Central Administration District. Kepler 92. The sky still wore its gray-bronze shroud. Faded ring lights spilling down on cold concrete blocks. Harlen passed through the checkpoint. His old military badge scanned a second too long. The yellow light blinked a warning. The security officer barely looked at him before waving him through. The corridors of the colonial admin offices were silent and cold. Each footstep echoed back at him. He stopped before the CAA door, drew a deep breath, and stepped inside. The air smelled of ozone and aging plastic. Leo Sin, a young CAA clerk, glanced up from his data console, expression flat. What do you need? Harlen didn't waste words. The evacuation list. Why was Camp 47 excluded? Leo shrugged. Evac slots are for direct labor only. Orphans don't qualify for priority tier. Quota lock decision. Not me. His voice was calm. Too calm. Almost cold. Harlen took a step forward, broad shoulders casting shadow over the desk. They're colonists. The charter is clear. Leo cut him off with a thin smile. The charter also allows cuts when resources run dry. You're retired. You know that. The air cracked tight between them. For a moment, Harlen's fist nearly came down on the clerk's jaw. Instead, he forced a breath through his teeth and slammed his hand flat on the desk. You just signed those kids' death warrants. Leo shrugged again, turning the screen away. File a complaint if you want. You'll have an answer in 6 months. The words landed like a dull blade. Harlen turned sharply and strode out of the office. Outside, the daylight felt dimmer, the wind sweeping red dust across his boots. He stopped at the top of the steps, staring toward the distant haze where Camp 47 lay. Miko's voice from the night before echoed in his mind. You have to teach us tomorrow. Harlen pulled his cap low. If the system locks the gate, we'll find another way. He turned down a narrow service corridor. heading for an old maintenance station he knew wasn't fully locked out. Last night he had only heard the words. Today he would see the truth with his own eyes. Harlen slipped into the old maintenance wing on the north side of the center. Darkness swallowed the narrow hall, thick with the sharp smell of ozone and metallic dust. An outdated data station sat in a nest of tangled cables, its indicator light blinking weakly. He slid in his military ID and keyed in a code he hadn't forgotten in decades. The screen flickered, then glowed to life. Access. Legacy crawled across the display. The security prompt pulsed red. Sweat formed on Harlen's temple. He slowed his breathing and tunneled through the CAA layers, dropping into the PAG control net. Files opened one by one, like rusted hatches swinging wide. The port map appeared. Graybridge Airfield, mid-loading zone, berth Epsilon 3. A blinking triangle lit the screen. Kestrel 9, Mecha 2, status, docked. At the bottom, cold letters, quota lock, ignition inhibited. Harlen's fingers tightened on the edge of the table. It's still there. The status light turned yellow. A dry ping rang out. The system had traced the intrusion. Harlen shut the windows, muted the alert, and copied the berth map and override codes onto a chip. Bootsteps passed outside the hall, shaking the wire mesh floor. No one stopped. The light shifted back to a dull green. He pulled out his card, tugged his hood low, and made for the engineer's block. The mechanics bar was open, smell of hydraulic oil blending with strong coffee. At the far end of the counter, Tomas Hale looked up, his silver mustache twitching. "Been a long time," Tomas said quietly. "Need you?" Harlen answered. "Kestrel 9 is still at E3. Quota lock has its engines chained." Tomas glanced at the ceiling where the sound sensors hid. "If you touch it, PAG will light the grid. Chief Derek Vell will hunt you till you're dead. Can it be unlocked? Yes. But you'll have to kill the quota lock at the core. One key in the control tower, another with security." A shift horn wailed outside. Red light swept the bar once, then died. Thomas dropped his voice. "The blind window at E3 only happens at shift change. Less than 5 minutes. That's enough," Harlen said, eyes fixed on the bottom of his cup. In the reflection, he saw the kids' faces at Camp 47. Miko clutching a crumb of bread. Elin shaking with the map in her hands. Harlen's stare hardened, then burned bright. "I'm not stealing for glory," he said slowly. "I'm taking back their seats." Thomas only sighed, slid an old service badge across the counter. "It'll get you through the first gate. That's all. Be careful." Harlen pocketed the badge, nodded once. Outside, the runway wind cut cold against his neck. He knew exactly what came next. Tonight, he would return to Camp 47. By morning, no one would be standing still. Late night. Camp 47 lay under the dim glow of oil lamps. Wind from the sable mines rattled the metal posts outside. Harlen stepped into the common hall. The smell of cooking smoke still hung in the air. The children sat in a circle, wide-eyed, waiting for a verdict. He stood at the center, removed his hood, and placed Thomas's badge on the table. "Listen carefully. No one is coming for us. The evacuation list is closed. The last ship is locked by quota lock, and they won't release it." Murmurs rippled through the room. Miko hugged his knees. Sarah bit her lip. Bren dropped his head, shoulders trembling. "So, we're just left here?" Eileen asked, voice tight. Harlen looked around the circle. "If we sit and wait, yes. But if we move, we still have a chance." A child broke into sobs. The sound tore through the room. Mara Juno stepped from the back doorway, resting a hand on Harlen's shoulder. "They're only kids." "They have to live," Harlen cut her off, never looking away from the circle. Oren shot to his feet, fists balled. "If no one's coming, we go ourselves." The words struck like a spark. Tears were wiped away. Miko lifted his head. The air went taut, humming like a drawn wire. Harlen stepped fully into the circle, voice steady and deep. "Tomorrow morning we start training like soldiers. If you want to live, follow orders. If you can't, quit tonight. Tomorrow there's no room for hesitation." Silence. Then, one by one, the children nodded. Mara turned away, wiping her eyes. Harlen slid the badge into his pocket and killed the lights. The room fell into darkness. He walked to the window, staring at the sky where the faded ring cut across the night like a blade. His shadow stood tall, shoulders squared. A soldier returned to the line. That night, Camp 47 was unnaturally still, as if holding its breath for morning. Morning. Camp 47. Kepler 92. Dust fog from the sable mines drifted lazily, and the faded ring's light turned the whole training yard a dull bronze. Harlen's boots struck the ground in a sharp, steady rhythm. "Form up!" The children scrambled into a line, eyes still heavy with sleep. Mara Juno stood by the gate with her arms crossed, worry etched on her face. Harlen dropped a sandbag on the ground and pointed at the hanging ropes. Today, obstacle run. Full load, no dropping halfway. Murmurs broke out. Miko shuffled back a step. Bren bit his lip. One of the older kids muttered, "You trying to turn them into soldiers for real?" Harlen turned, voice rasping. "I'm trying to keep them alive." A short whistle blast split the air. The group started running. Aylin and Sarah took the lead, feet hitting the ground in sync. Oren gritted his teeth, carrying the water crate across his shoulders. Bren stumbled, fell hard. The line behind him tumbled too. Harlen's whistle cut through the noise. Again. "Keep pace. No one left behind." Breath came harsh and fast. Sweat dripped into the dust. One child staggered and collapsed completely. Harlen was there in an instant, hauling the kid onto his shoulder and striding straight through the obstacle. "Look at this," he barked. "No one gets left. As long as you breathe, you move." The yard went silent. The kid's eyes were wide, but something shifted. Fear gave way to determination. Mara drew a slow breath and turned away to hide the sound of it. Harlen set the child down, patted his shoulder. "Drink. Stand up. Do it again." The next run was different, quicker, tighter. Aylin glanced back, shouting, "Faster, Bren!" Bren pushed hard, cleared the last obstacle, and stumbled through grinning. Laughter and ragged breaths filled the yard. Harlen's shoulders eased slightly. "Good. This is just the start. Tonight we add another lap." He glanced toward the abandoned mine, where the wind still howled through the pipes. In his eyes, this wasn't a forgotten camp anymore. It was the start of a unit, a team preparing for something bigger. Night fell fast over Kepler 92. Wind from the faded ring whistled through broken steel frames, carrying the cold smell of iron. Harlen led the children across the empty road toward Graybridge Airfield. Patrol lights swept slow arcs across concrete walls, leaving pale streaks in their wake. He raised a hand, split into teams. Oren dropped to one knee, unhooking the latch on the fake maintenance panel Harlen had planted earlier. Sarah held her position at the corner, signaling when the patrol beam swung away. Aylin clutched the old comm set, whispering as she counted the sweep cycle. 3, 2, 1. Clear. They slipped into the storage yard, their footsteps so soft only their breathing could be heard. They reached the training ground set up on a frame of scrap hulls. Harlen gave the order. "Climb, in order." Oren went first, testing every weld before signaling Aylin and Sarah to follow. Bren was hauled up with a rope and Miko came last, tied at the waist, eyes shut tight. On the hull's roof, Harlen pointed out cover positions. Anyone entering the cargo bay hugs the left wall. Passengers sit still, heads down. "Oren, hold the hatch." He flipped the switch. The lights went black, simulating a power loss. "Hold until I say." The sound of the children's heartbeats filled the dark. Harlen checked each safety line, tugging the clips one by one. When the lights came back on, the group was frozen exactly in place. Harlen nodded. "Good." Again. Outside, the patrol light suddenly shifted angle. A beam swept dangerously close to the training hull. Aylin yanked Bren down, clamping a hand over Miko's mouth just as he was about to sneeze. The light lingered, crawled past, then moved on. No one had been seen. The group exhaled all at once, relief rippling through them. Harlen gave the retreat signal. They slipped out the same way they came, shadows melting into the night. On the way back, Harlen scribbled in his notebook, "Next time, 20% faster." Oren shrugged. "We'll make it." By the time they reached camp, their faces were streaked with dust, but their eyes were burning bright. Harlen looked at each of them and nodded slowly. Good. Tomorrow night, we do it again. And next time, treat it as real. Late night. The road back to Camp 47. The path was damp, fog clinging to the metallic scent drifting from the sable mines. The children walked in a line, clothes streaked with dust, faces tired but smiling faintly from the night's successful drill. Harlen followed at the rear, steps slow, eyes sweeping the shadows. Then, the whir of rotor blades tore through the night from above. A red beam sliced across the rusted fence and swept over the ground. Harlen froze, hand raised in a sharp signal for silence. Fog glowed faintly under the warning light. Sentinel 12 hovered near the camp gate, its body rotating like a predator circling prey. The camera cluster turned toward them, casting an ID scan across the group. Code strings flickered along its hull, then froze on one name, Harlen Mirek. Doors creaked open across the camp, pale faces peering out in alarm. One child swallowed hard, the sound loud as a gunshot in the silence. Harlen pressed a finger to his lips. Stand still. Heads down. No one runs. Elin pulled Bren close. Miko clung to his brother's hand, eyes squeezed shut. The group's breathing slowed together until they seemed to move as one body. The rotor hum deepened, the red beam climbing from their feet to their faces. It stopped on Harlen's face. A flat mechanical voice cut through the mist. Unit 47, halt for inspection. Harlen tilted his head slightly, blocking the view of the children behind him. His hand brushed the pocket where Tomas's badge lay pressed against his chest. His eyes narrowed, catching the red light in their reflection. The night seemed to hold its breath. The Sentinel's engine growled low, like counting down to something inevitable. Harlen's shadow stretched across the wet ground, poised for what came next. The fog of the Sentinel encounter still clung to the night. Camp 47 was silent except for the wind knocking against the rusted fence. Harlen stood in the common hall, the oil lamp behind him, throwing a long shadow across the wall. On the table, the Graybridge airfield map lay wide open, Epsilon 3 marked in heavy ink. The children were already sitting in a circle, waiting. Harlen's voice was low and steady. There's no time left. Tomorrow night we take Kestrel 9. No more waiting. No more begging. Mara Juno stood behind him, lips pressed tight. You understand what happens if you're caught? Then I pay for it, not them. Harlen's gaze swept over the small faces staring back at him. This is the last plan we get. He laid the ruler across the map and began assigning roles. Oren, you open the hatch and hold it until everyone's inside. Sarah, you ride shotgun. Help me with nav when I fly. Aylin, you watch the comm feed. I need you calling every sweep of the patrol lights. Every second. Bren, Miko, you hide in the cargo bay. Stay there until I say move. Miko swallowed hard and raised his hand. What if nobody lets us out? Then I open it myself. Harlen knelt, locking eyes with him. I swear I'll get you all off this rock. But swearing isn't enough. From tonight on, everyone fights. Bren squeezed Miko's small hand and nodded. The tension in the room seemed to snap. The circle straightened, eyes burning with resolve. Harlen marked the escape route in bold strokes. His voice dropped lower. We get one chance. Miss it, and there will be no ships left on this planet. He folded the map and blew out the oil lamp. The room sank into darkness. The sound of his old field jacket rustled as he stood. Tomorrow morning, no drills. Eat well. Rest. Tomorrow night, we begin Emberlift. Outside, the wind screamed from the sable mines, like a warning siren before the charge. Harlen paused at the door, looking toward the dim sky where the cold stars glinted. There was no way back now, only the path toward the ship. Late dusk over Kepler 92. The sky turned a dull bronze as night settled. Red dust from the sable mines drifting in thin, lazy trails. The campyard was unnervingly quiet, only the wind howling through the rusted posts. One by one, the children changed into dark clothes, tied rope around their waists, and packed small rations into pouches. Oren crouched by the frame of the door, checking the false release latch one last time. Metal clinked softly. Sarah pulled an old safety strap free of its rusty nail, wiped it clean, and tested the buckle until it clicked. Elin sat in the corner with the comm set, tuning the frequency until the light blinked green, the quiet tapping filling the still air. Bren tightened Miko's bootlaces, tying each knot firm. Every move was small but focused, like soldiers readying for battle. In his room, Harlen opened the old chest. He lifted the worn sidearm, wiped every spot of grime from the days of old campaigns. The magazine snapped in with a dry, final sound. He slung the holster across his shoulder, eyes hard. He switched on the battered recorder, voice low. "If we don't make it, don't come looking. Burn the records. Break up the camp." The wind outside seemed to stop for a moment. Harlen paused, then shut the recorder off and slid the chip into a drawer. Miko stepped in, clutching a small scrap of metal with crooked letters scratched into it. "For luck." Harlen glanced at it, the corner of his mouth twitching into a rare smile. He knelt, took it, and tucked it into his inner pocket. "Thanks, kid. I'll keep it until we leave this place." In his eyes, the fire of resolve burned bright. When full night fell, the group gathered in the yard. They stood shoulder to shoulder, faces streaked with dirt but eyes blazing. Only the wind howled. Only fabric rustled in the dark. Harlen looked at each one of them, nodded once, slow. No words were needed. Tonight they weren't an orphan camp anymore. They were a team, ready for the fight of their lives. The night wrapped Kepler 92 in a heavy shroud, stars dim as if hiding. From far off, the port's alarm horns echoed in short bursts, blending with the wind screaming through the storage yards. Harlen's team crossed the open stretch, their shadows sliding across the wet ground. Elin. "Sweep light. 3, 2, 1, go!" They sprinted through the first gap, pressed flat to the dirt, breathing shallow. Oren led Team 1. Sarah followed with the younger kids, Harlen covering the rear. When the light swept back, they were already against the concrete wall, holding still until it moved on. They advanced on Elin's counts, step by step, corner by corner, a single living shadow sliding toward Epsilon 3. Kestrel 9 appeared ahead, its silver hull gleaming, engines preheated, plumes of white vapor curling into the night. Oren rushed to the outer control panel, hands shaking but steady enough to pop the latch. The side hatch opened with a faint clack. "Sarah, get them into the cargo bay." She nodded, ushering Bren and Miko low and quick inside. Elin checked the comm one last time, green light blinking. Harlen scanned the perimeter. His palms were slick, but his jaw was locked tight. So far, everything was holding. Suddenly, floodlights blazed behind them. A blinding cone of light swept across their backs. The alarm wailed, tearing the night apart. "Move!" Harlen roared. They bolted for the ship, footsteps pounding, breath mixing with the howl of the wind. Oren slammed the latch, forcing the hatch wider. Miko slipped. Elin caught him, shoved him up the step. The moment Harlen's boots hit the landing pad, an armored security crawler skidded to a stop in front of Kestrel 9. Red strobes blasted over them, bathing the team in bloody light. The nearby control display flashed violently. T-30, 3 minutes until planetary launch window closes. Harlen turned, chambered the pistol, stepping wide to shield the children behind him. His eyes were on fire as he faced the crawler head-on. The Kestrel's engine wash sent red dust spiraling into the air. The roar of turbines mixed with the shriek of sirens, shaking the night itself. The world seemed to freeze, nothing but the cold countdown ticking in their ears. Part 5 was waiting to explode. Epsilon 3. Birth. Kepler 92, night black as ink, the control tower's alarms wailed, echoing across the rows of abandoned warehouses. Searchlights slashed the tarmac like bright blades. Red dust rose in swirls, caught in the heat wash of Kestrel 9's warming engines. Harlen stood at the nose of the ship, fingers locked around the grip of his pistol. The children pressed flat against the hull, wide-eyed. The security crawler screeched to a stop, blocking the ramp. Its loudspeaker barked, "Stop! Get on your knees!" A second voice came over the comm, calm and cold. "Unit 47, all exits sealed. Disarm, kneel, and wait for processing." Two guards stepped out, fanning wide to cover angles. One spoke softly into his headset. "Wait for him to step back 3 more paces, then trigger the grid." The commander's voice answered, "No lethal fire. Bring him in alive. Quota lock wants interrogation." Harlen straightened, then fired a single warning shot. The bullet sparked off the crawler's plating. Oren and Sarah yanked the younger ones toward the cargo bay. Elin sprinted to the side panel, fingers flying across the codes. Bren stumbled but held Miko's hand, dragging him up the ramp. Gunfire cracked back from the security team, rounds sparking off the steel deck. Harlen pivoted, firing in short bursts to keep them pinned. "Faster!" he shouted, voice cutting through the sirens. The side hatch gave a loud clack and swung open. Sarah shoved the kids inside and pulled the hatch half closed to block the line of sight. Elin's panel blinked green. Ignition unlocked. Kestrel 9's auxiliary thrusters howled, the whole pad shuddering under the heat. Then, an explosion. A round had punctured the spare fuel drum. Flames shot skyward behind them, throwing harsh light over the scene. The ship's warning blared, "Heat critical! Engines must engage immediately," Miko screamed, voice breaking. "Harlen's not inside!" Everyone turned to the open hatch. Harlen was still outside, standing between the children and the security team. He reloaded, sent a burst of fire down range, forcing the soldiers back behind the crawler. "Get inside!" Elin shouted. "Not yet. Wait for my signal." Harlen's voice was a growl as he backed toward the ramp, one step at a time through the crossfire. The moment stretched impossibly long. Heat shimmered in the air, red dust whipping around him. The smell of propellant and burning fuel filled their lungs. Framed in the blood-red glow, Harlen stood tall, the leader who never left anyone behind. The rear hatch slammed shut the instant Harlen dove inside, hitting the steel deck hard. One last burst of gunfire rang off the hull like punctuation. He lay there, chest heaving, pistol still clutched tight, scanning the cargo bay. Ellen gave him a quick nod. Everyone was in. Oren slammed the lock, sweat running down his temple. "Start her up," Harlen rasped. Sarah dropped into the co-pilot's seat, hands shaking but sure. 3, 2, 1. Harlen yanked the secondary lever. The main engines roared alive, the thunder vibrating through the hull. The ship tilted, then tore free of the ground. Hot wind blasted the viewport, whipping red dust into spirals below. Miko cried out as the G-force pressed them deep into their seats. Bren wrapped his arms around him. The warning klaxons still blared, the lights flashing crimson. Harlen leaned forward, locking the auxiliary controls, eyes darting to the radar. PAG pursuit signals were still bright. 2 crawlers were racing for the main strip. "They're not quitting," Harlen snarled. Elin's voice cracked. "Drone launch! East Tower!" Harlen twisted the throttle. The engines screamed, rattling every bolt in the ship. "Hold on! We clear the radar net or they lock a missile." Kestrel 9 surged, tearing through the night. The explosions below faded into a distant thunder. Then, the clouds split. The sirens cut out. Only the deep, steady hum of the engines and the ragged breathing of the crew remained. Harlen dropped into the seat beside Sarah, sweat running down his hairline. A slow, weary smile broke across his face. "We're free." The cabin let out a collective breath. Some of the children sobbed, clutching each other. Mara gripped Sarah's shoulder wordlessly. Through the viewport, the stars emerged, silver and sharp against the black sky. The soft glow lit the children's faces, alive with wonder and survival. But on the radar, a single blip still glowed, accelerating. Following them, Harlen's smile faded. He tightened his harness and murmured under his breath, "It's not over." Not yet. The cabin was bathed in pale blue light. The only sound the steady hum of the engines. The children unbuckled slowly, curling up against the walls, spent, like they had just woken from a nightmare. Bren leaned back against the bulkhead, eyes still red. Miko slept with his head on Bren's leg, tiny hand still gripping the piece of metal he had given Harlen before they left. Mara crouched, gently wiping the dried blood from Oren's temple. "You're fine now," she said, softer than she had ever sounded. Harlen sat at the forward console, silent. His breathing slowed, but one hand stayed on the yoke, ready. Through the viewport, the dim stars stretched out behind them, shrinking like smoke trails. An empty feeling passed through the cabin. They had left Kepler 92, but no one knew what waited ahead. Elin sat up straight, her voice small. "Where will we go?" The cabin went still. Every eye turned to Harlen. He slowly brought up the star map. Dots of light blooming across the screen. Each one a colony, a port, a possible threat. "To the place where hope still exists," Harlen said, voice low but clear as if swearing an oath to himself. Just then, the right side radar blinked red. A trailing signal flared. The distance closing. Elin checked the numbers, her face going pale. A small ship. "It's following us." Harlen's grip tightened on the controls. The console lights reflected off the lines of tension on his face. Over the open comm, a cold mechanical voice cut in. "Unit 47. Reduce speed and prepare for capture. This is your final warning." The words froze the air. Oren ground his teeth. Sarah gripped the seat until her knuckles turned white. Harlen didn't answer. He flipped the ship into silent running mode and dipped the nose. "Strap in. We're not stopping yet." Kestrel 9 plunged into the dark, its exhaust streak carving a slash across the night. The red warning light on the radar kept pulsing, a promise of the chase still to come. The ship's tail glowed like a comet's scar across the void. Inside the cabin, the children were quiet, watching the faint stars recede. Mara stroked Miko's hair. Sarah wrapped an arm around Bren. Oren pressed his forehead to the wall and let out a long breath. Harlen's hands stayed locked on the controls, eyes fixed on the radar blinking in steady red. "The contact was still there closing in. We got off Kepler 92, he murmured, almost to himself. "But this game's just beginning." He leaned back, sweat still clinging to his brow, and brought the star map online again. Blue light filled the cabin, soft and cold. "To the place where hope still exists," he repeated, voice steady, final. The imagined camera pulled back, the small ship cutting through the darkness, heading into the unknown. The radar light kept flashing red, a warning that freedom, so hard-won, could be ripped away at any moment. Thank you for staying with this story until the end. If Harlen and the children's desperate escape moved you or kept you holding your breath, hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you won't miss episode 2, The Gray Between Stars. In the next chapter, Harlen and the kids will face even harsher pursuit, impossible moral choices, and a deeper conspiracy within the CAA. Don't look away, this is only the beginning.